Hey guys, Barry Townley here from Everyday Great. I grew up in a small town, southeast Texas. It was different. It was it was fun. It was great. I loved growing up down there. It was down in southeast Texas. If you go south from my house, 15 minutes, you're in the Gulf of Mexico. If you go east, you're in Louisiana. It was just a different type of place. I grew up as a teenager in the '70s, and we didn't lock the doors. We didn't lock the house. I mean, it was a town of about 10,000 people. Everybody knew everybody. It was awesome. I loved growing up there, and things were different. When we wanted something to drink, we would say, "Hey, I want a Coke," and then the waitress or your mother or whoever would say, "Oh, what kind of Coke do you want?" I'd like a Dr. Pepper. Because everything was a Coke. We didn't say soda, we didn't say pop. Southeast Texas. At night, we knew when to be home because the street lights would come on. And when the street lights came on, we came home. No cell phones. Microwaves were pretty new for us, and they were huge. But we knew to be home because that's what time supper was. I didn't know what dinner was either. But growing up with a Cajun family, we had rice and gravy every night. Meat, rice, and gravy. We had gumbo. We had fish all the time. I didn't know there was anything different. When we had mashed potatoes, somebody's coming to visit. So it was just a different time and a different place, and it was just a great place, to grow up in. Well, there was one thing that I'll never forget, and it was my mom's cooking of any kind. But I would come home, street light would come on, I'd come home, and she would get out her cast iron skillet, and she would make fried chicken. But it was boneless. Well, boneless was kind of unusual back in the day. Now sometimes she would make it, because who didn't love a good chicken leg? But she made boneless chicken, and I'd sit and watch, and I'd love it because it was so good. Afterwards, she would take the grease from the frying pan, put in a little flour, a little milk, a little bit of love, and she'd make chicken gravy. Well, who didn't love that? Poured over your chicken or over a biscuit or over just a loaf of bread for me. It was the only time that I would volunteer to do the dishes because I would take a loaf of bread and just sop up everything in the skillet. True story. So she made this boneless chicken. And it was me and my dad and her. My older siblings, they were already out of the house, off to college or married. And we'd have dinner, supper, I don't know. But we'd sit down at the table and we would eat that fried chicken. But there'd always be a last piece. My dad was 6'4", 300 pounds plus, and he'd look at me every time and he'd say, "Boy, you want that piece of chicken?" Yeah, there was never a time when I turned it down. Of course, I could have been stuffed. I could have been, I always wanted that last piece of chicken. So my dad gave it to me, and I took it. I didn't realize what that meant until later. Becoming a parent, becoming an adult, growing up, you start to realize that there are other people more important than you. And that was my wife, and that was my daughters. And so when it came time for supper and there'd be a last piece of chicken left over, I offered it to them. Couldn't take it. See, I realized my dad paid for my college. We didn't have any money. Growing up, I didn't realize that it meant you didn't have money when your brother, who was 6 years older than you, would pass down his clothes. I just thought it was new clothes. I didn't realize that getting your first car when you were a senior in college meant that you didn't have money. But I didn't care. Growing up in a small town with great parents and loving family, I was happy as I could be. So, to me, that last piece of chicken, it represents a servant's heart. My mom and dad gave me everything that they had. They did without. The same thing for my wife and I. When our kids went off to college, when our kids were in high school, for that matter, we sometimes did without so that we could give them what they wanted and what they needed. We gave them our last piece of chicken, as it were. That last piece of chicken made me who I am today. And I'm truly a servant. Other people are first in my life. Who's the most important person in your life? Real quick. For me, it's everybody else. So when I look and I see that last piece of chicken, I don't see opportunity like I used to. I see a servant's heart. And my father had it. And I thank Almighty God that He gave it to me, because I have it now. My whole family, we volunteer, we do missions. We have that servant's heart, and it's because of that last piece of chicken. So if you want to make every day great, servant's heart. Take care.